Bitcoin is kind of a 30% risk-free annual returns. Why don't you get a mortgage? Why don't you get a loan? You should take advantage of the system that is killing you. The faster you buy Bitcoin, the more you can buy for your own fiat. I stole money from you. I stole money from everyone in European Union. I stole money from everyone that has a fiat exposure. The more Bitcoin you have, the more freedom I have. They want to keep it at this 2% inflation only, so you do not notice that. But they're so greedy, so they do it for a 10%, they're 13%, and in some third world countries, they do it just for double digits, and people notice it. Once people notice it, everything starts to crumble. Once we fix the money, we fix the world, we fix half of the problem in the world with just the Bitcoin. I don't care at the end of the day if it is a Trump, if it is a Biden, if it's a Kamala Harris, just get out of the jail. The fiat system is the main jail, and the problem with this jail is that we're all born in it. I would like to focus maybe a little bit on the loan I took for buying Bitcoin. I think it's of course not a financial advice. I want to underscore that because I guess everyone's situation is different, but I think it's an interesting one. If you should do it, and maybe who should do it, why I should do it, and maybe like what pushed me to do it eventually. So this is a one thing, and in general, going from this to like the money printer, like, so you can do it and you abuse kind of the system that is abusing you, right, by doing it. And I also wanted to underscore that I never wanted to take a loan. I had some problems with debt in my past, and maybe I will tell a little bit about it too. So I was kind of very, very hesitant to do it, but eventually I pulled the trigger, and maybe we can discuss about it, what pushed me to do it, because it wasn't irrelevant loan, but eventually I did it. I bought a Bitcoin with it, just straight. I just got the money, just took everything out from the bank, bought some sorry, not crypto, bought the Bitcoin with it, and yeah, and I think it was probably life-changing decision at the end of the day for me.
Wow, I think we can directly jump into that. Let's start in the beginning. What was the bad decision? What was the bad thing with debt that you had before that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I guess I was thinking about when was the first time I've heard about Bitcoin. It was like 2016, and it was my I had the best time of my life, right? I was spending my mother's money on whatever I wanted, right? I was taking all the short-term loans with a high percent, like with high rates, and I was spending it on all the hedonistic stuff that you can buy in your life. I was spending it on alcohol. I was spending it on the parties. It's a shame that I did it, and when I wonder why I haven't bought Bitcoin, it's probably it's probably because I wasn't in a state of despair at that time, right? There's something like Saylor said once that you cannot really sell a Bitcoin to someone that is not in a despair, or it's very, very hard to do it. If someone is, within the system, riding high the waves in a fiat system, he's not very interested in Bitcoin, right? Like, it's very hard to sell someone a Bitcoin that's, doing really, really great, even though I wasn't doing great at that time. The despair come later, of course. The hangover after all of this came later. So the short-term loans it was very stupid. I did a lot of stupid things in my life, and it was probably one of them. And I've learned it the hard way how is it to live in a debt, right? How to be, people knocking on your doors asking for the money for you to pay, and that's why eventually when I paid all that debt, that's why it was so hard for me to take a decision to take another loan. This time it wasn't a short-term loan, of course. It was just a loan that I took in a bank, just the right way, how you should do it, probably. That's pretty much it. I don't know. I got lost a little bit in the story.
But it's interesting because the first experience you had with debt was basically the bad side of debt, where debt is enslaving people, but then
Exactly.
now you try to do the good side of debt, where you can use debt to enrich yourself and kind of use that system in a good way, which a lot of people are doing. Even I, to a certain extent, do it because I usually dance around my zero bank balance, and sometimes I'm going like minus 2,000, minus 5,000, and I try to get again to zero. If I'm going above like 2,000, 5,000 euros in the plus, I usually directly buy Bitcoin with that. So I always make that dance of having zero fiat.
Yeah.
But I still use sometimes in some days the debt system to basically have maximal exposure to Bitcoin. Now, what is the good side of the debt, and what are you trying to do? I loved how you wrote me. I'm trying to. How did you write it? I'm stealing from you. Basically,
Yeah,
you're stealing from
exactly.
everyone that is holding fiat.
So this is the thing that I stole money from you, right? I stole money from you. You can put it in the highlight. I stole money from everyone, probably in European Union. I stole money from everyone that has a fiat exposure in Poland, in PLN. And it feels good, right? It feels really good. And on the other hand, it feels absolutely bad, right? It feels like you did immoral thing, because eventually you can think about it like, like stealing. There is a reason why we have all this you shouldn't steal laws, right? Or even in the Decalogue, there is being said that, hey, don't steal from me, right? Like, there is a reason. It's like the foundation of our whole civilization to just let's agree that we do not steal from each other, because maybe it's beneficial in the long run, right? If people do not steal with each other, if people do not murder each other, if people sleep with their own wives. This is what is in the Decalogue, right? Which is kind of like the foundation of Western civilization. We can say that, I guess, the Christianity, right, and the Decalogue, that a lot of the laws is built on top of that, right, nowadays, right. So it felt really good, but on the other hand, it felt really bad, because what I did, right, is in fact taking this loan. Bank produced it out of thin air, and basically I diluted the money supply. I increased the money supply in Poland, right? Because first I got a PLN, then I have to go to the euro, then I have to go to the exchange, then I have to go to the Bitcoin, then I have to go to the cold storage, right? And this is the end of the story. But eventually I had to increase the supply of PLN in Poland, right? And basically I stole just a tiny little bit. Of course, it's unnoticeable, right? But I stole effectively from all of the people that are living in Poland, right? So it is unnoticeable, but it is a fact. It is a fact, because like you can think about it like, if you take a bucket of water. I don't know where the majority of your listeners are coming from. Is it from
America,
Europe? It's from
usually.
America. So maybe I'll use the American one. So if you take a bucket of water from the Mexican Gulf, or now it's probably going to call American Gulf, right? Like if you take a bucket of water from the American Gulf, right? Is the level of the sea in New York is going to decrease or not, right? Just a bucket of water, I just take it out from the ocean. Is it going to decrease, right? So I asked ChatGPT about it, and he said like, no, it's not. It's unnoticeable. It's unnoticeable. Nobody's going to notice that, right? But effectively, you decreased the level of the ocean in New York. The harbor is a little bit more shallower. I don't know by how much. It's like probably nanometers, right? But the matter of the fact is that I did it, right? I made the New York harbor, just it has just a little bit shallower water. And what I did to the financial system, I of course, by decreasing the amount of money, I've created inflation, right? So tomorrow somebody's gonna buy some eggs a bit more expensive, right? And then it's a matter of scale, because I'm not the only one that did it that day. So if you multiply it, by 1,000, so like those buckets, you multiply it by 1,000, by 1,000,000, then it starts to make, then it's visible, right? And this is what the central bankers are doing. They're over greedy. They want to keep it at this 2% inflation only, so you do not notice that. But they're so greedy, they just cannot. They just help themselves, right? So they do it for a 10%, they're 13%, and in some third world countries they do it just for double digits, and people notice it, right? And once people notice it, they are everything starts to crumble, and it's getting even worse, right? Yeah.
There's an
So
yeah.
yeah,
So
go
sorry to
ahead.
jump in here. I think it's really interesting. There are so many amazing comparisons with inflation and the debt system. I love
Mm,
Jeff Booth's one with Left the House. If I go to you in the house and just take one small item and I do this every year, at some point your house will be completely empty. And I think people don't realize that because it's such a huge and complex system. But if you break it down to a small one, if you just take, for example, the fridge, you're going to someone's fridge and always taking a small sip of milk and you take a small piece of the bread. The first time, probably nobody noticed because they're like, maybe I drank that milk someday. I don't know how much milk there
mm,
was in the carton, really. But if you do that a lot and you drink a lot, at some point you're like, oh, like where is my my food going? And this is the same thing with inflation. That's why
yeah,
they have this target of like 2% inflation, because that's the target that most people never notice. But if it
yeah,
goes to 10% and stays there consistently, more people notice. Definitely people notice at 100%, 200% if we go to hyperinflation scenarios. And this is the problem. Also in your example with the bucket, if you're the only one getting one small bucket out of the ocean, nobody notices. But if for some reason the ocean has small leaks and they are going somewhere, I'm not so good in geology, but if the ocean has small leaks and those leaks get bigger and bigger and bigger, and all of a sudden the water is sinking and sinking and sinking, at some point we have to live down there in the ocean to be closer to the ocean, because at some point there will not be water left because all those movements are exponential. It's the same thing if you have, I don't know, if you have yeah, if you do a bathtub and you have water in there, I don't know. I have a thing where I have two settings where I can leave it out very slow, and one where it's basically empty very quick, and there's even like a small circle building then. And this makes a huge difference how fast it's deflationary. And it's now an interesting question of like, okay, if you take a loan out, this is essentially expanding the money supply. This is essentially inflation. This is essentially stealing. If you live through as a good person, you don't want to steal. Is that stealing? Like, I think that is stealing, but a very
yeah.
small amount. Like it's almost like taking the pen from the bank. Maybe the pen from the bank is even more than that, but it is definitely stealing, and it's something bad. The question is, should we use as good people the bad system and maybe bring it quicker to fall with that, because we are
Hmm.
quicker in taking more money from that system and putting into Bitcoin? Is that maybe a good thing to do? I don't know. That's an interesting ethical debate, I feel like.
Yeah, like you've made a lot of good points, and what I wanted to say, like, this is the whole problem of the system, that it pushes you to do it, that pushes you to do the immoral thing, right? That's what I hate the most about the system, right? I guess the Bitcoiners do not mind that I stole a little bit from the other guys and I bought some Bitcoin with it, right? Like they don't hold the grudge. They would probably even applaud me, right? But uh, what's with the rest of the people, Like, it's not really good to do. So then, should we? So there are like two ways, right? Should we kill the system slowly? Because I think sometimes when I think about Bitcoin, I think that there is no bad scenarios for Bitcoin. There are only good scenarios for Bitcoin, right? Because there are only bad scenarios for the central bankers. There's only good scenarios for Bitcoin. So I don't see any bad scenarios out there, even though there are some challenges. So should we go the fast way? Should we go the slow way? So the fast way might end up very, very badly. I was thinking about it multiple times. Like these people in power, the problem with them is that they're so hopelessly dependent on the system that I think they cannot stand it. They still have so much power that if you will take it from them very, very quickly, they might react very, very dangerously, very, very nervously, very, very aggressively. Maybe it's like, I know it's maybe controversial, but actually the um, Robin Williams made this comparison about central banks is that they're a group of junkies that are on heroin, right? Like, I feel that this is even more than that. If you ever studied how people are getting addicted on opiates, on heroin, and what are the symptoms of withdrawal, you would understand what I mean by saying, like, it's like taking, the needle from a heroin addict. But I think it's multiple times worse. If you ever saw a person on a withdrawal, they would do. Some of them would do anything to get it back. Right? They would steal. They would rob. They would kill. Maybe some of them would kill. Right? So imagine now you got a bunch of people in power that are addicted to it so much they cannot give it away. They cannot go cold turkey. I guess most of them cannot go cold turkey on this one. So if we'll take it from them fast, I guess it might end up in, I hope so. I hope not in some third world war or something like this. But it is a scenario that might happen. I
It's
don't know
it's
how. I don't know when. But it is a very powerful combination. You got an addict that have a lot of power. You want to take it from them. Expect a storm. You know.
That's an interesting point that I never thought about, because they are addicts and they kind of have, and there are a lot of extremely interesting studies with rats about addictions. You probably know that there are studies have done with rats. If you give them a button that it can press and they have some dopamine release, they will press it till they die and they
Yeah.
will stop eating and all those things. But they also tested something really interesting. Once they stop putting the function behind the button, they will continue to press it up to a point where they get, oh, there's nothing happening with the press the button. So they stop pressing that button. But then if you introduce something really catastrophic to their life, they again, even though they know the button is not working, they again go to that button and try to push it as hard as possible. So that's then compared to the monetary system now, where they're pushing now the button slowly, 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 and more. And if now something really bad happens, they probably will push the button just harder and harder to the point where the button might not work anymore, which is then hyperinflation, where everything comes out of control. What are they doing now? Because they still have all the weapons, they still have all the military power. That's kind of the what you just brought up, the dangerous scenario, this dangerous situation. What are you making of that? What do you think Bitcoin is a peaceful revolution, or could be a peaceful revolution?
Yeah. Well, I think Bitcoin is just putting those people on a rehab, right? Like it's just like we're going up to them and telling them we're Bitcoin is the intervention. You come to your addicted friend, right? You're saying like, hey, you had a fun, but you gotta get your shit together now, and we're just putting you on a rehab. I don't know for how long until you just get sober, because they're not sober, they're not thinking clearly. I was thinking about it, multiple times now, like why they do it, like because it doesn't like I know, okay, I know you want so much power, you want so much, you like the money, you like the stuff, but don't you think where it is leading, right? Like don't you see where it is heading, right? Like it's quite obvious, right, where it's heading, right? Like shouldn't you have some a little bit tiny amount of reason talking to you in a in the back of your head saying like, hey, you're you're gonna crash against the wall if you're gonna continue to do that, right? Like but I feel like it is come to this scenario where they just can't help themselves. And somebody even said that, I can't recall the name, but Like, even if they would like to change it, right? Even if they would like to change it, it's gonna cause catastrophical, like, financial crisis events, right? If they're gonna tell, like, okay, we're gonna go in cold turkey, we're not doing QE anymore, we're not pumping the fiat into the system, right? It's gonna cause some catastrophic events. Their banker friend's gonna fall. Once the banker friend's gonna fall, the society is going to fall, and once the society is going to fall, they're gonna knock on their doors and then say, like, hey, what are you guys doing? And they're gonna vote them out. Like, the people also are, most of the people are so dependent also on the system, right? That when the crisis is going to come to them, they're going to ask the government to do something about it, right? And what the government can do about it, so what they can do about it, they can do the QE again, right? So even if you want to change it eventually, you cannot change it, because if you want to try, if you want to be opportunistic, you want to say, like, okay, stop, let's sober up, right? You're going to be voted out of the office, and the guy that comes after you is going to do the QE, right? So I feel like there's no way or about, like, changing the system from the top, or it's very, 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 very hard to do it. Like, so the point is that we have to get things in our own hand, right? All the Bitcoiners have to take things in our own hand, right? It all started in the mailing list, and it's still like grassroots initiative, right? Bitcoin is like, the change has to come from us, not from them. They're so corrupt, they just cannot do it, right? Just cannot do it. So we have to peacefully put them into the rehab, and it is what we have to do, right? And one of my points I wanted to make today also is, like, don't count on your politician, on your favorite politician. Doesn't matter if he's from right or from left, if he's from pro-abortion, he's not pro-abortion, is he's for human rights, women rights, LGBTQ rights. It doesn't really matter, It doesn't really matter. Just focus on the Bitcoin, right? Just focus to fix the money. And I think once we fix the money, we fix the world, we fix half of the problem in the world with just the Bitcoin, right? That's why we should have our laser eyes on. It's the elephant in the room. Let's just address it. Let's just forget about it. It's one banner we can unite around, right? Just focus on this. Put all these junkies into the rehab, and then we will figure out what is the best for us. If we need more abortion, if we need more pro-choice, more pro-life, if we need more capitalistic, socialistic, it doesn't matter. I like to put it that way, that, like, if you're in a jail, it doesn't matter who's the mayor of the jail for you. It doesn't matter what's the currency in the jail for you. If it is cigarettes, or or some drugs, it doesn't matter what's the healthcare in the prison that much. It doesn't matter that much. Maybe from time to time you're gonna get a good mayor in the prison, like Trump, right? Like, but he's still a mayor of the prison you're living in. So I don't care at the end of the day that much if it is a Trump, if it is a Biden, if it is Kamala Harris, it is whoever your favorite politician in your own country. Just get out of the jail, right? Like, let's get out of the jail. How about getting out of the jail, and then we'll think about what we do next, right? And not get comfortable, because some people like to get comfortable in jail, right? Okay, we're in a jail. Okay, let's make our life more comfortable. Let's make a capitalism in our jail, right? So we can make this commerce. We can sell stuff in a jail. Let's get out of the jail, for God's sake.
That's is the jail the fiat system, or does it
Yes.
extend to the political system?
I think this is the fiat system. I think this is the fiat system is the main jail. And the problem with this jail is that we're all born in it. My wife is attorney, and from time to time she's got these cases, right? Like, there was a guy that was sitting in a prison for 15 years, and then he went out and he stabbed someone, like, within the 5 days after he got released, and then he went back to the jail. I'm like, dude, like, don't you want to live outside of the jail? Like you just got your freedom, right? Weren't you waiting for or something? Like, no, because jail is now his life, right? The problem also with the society, the problem we're facing as Bitcoiners is that people don't understand what's the freedom anymore because they were born in jail. They think, oh, so this is what I got, right? We live in this bubble where we think this is normal. We live in a fiat system. We think this is normal, right? So what do you mean by getting out? I've been born in here. Imagine, I don't know if there are any studies, but imagine someone being born in jail, not only living there for 15 years, but imagine from the very moment you've been born, the only thing you know is jail, right? And now go to that guy and convince him that there is, there is a freedom out there. You can go out wherever you want. There's no one watching you 24/7. It's go like, this is some scam. I don't buy it, right? Like, I don't buy it. It cannot be like this, right? So the fiat is the biggest problem, I think, and we gotta get out of it as soon as possible. Okay, maybe they're not as soon as possible. Let's talk about, like, we can discuss about it if we want to get out as soon as possible, or as Saylor is saying, let's just don't burn everything and just get on a lifeboat in Bitcoin, right? Because a lot of things might happen that we do not expect, and maybe just go the slow way, maybe try to convince them, or but I don't care which way we choose. What we have to do is we just have to stack sats, and this is what all I know, right? Just stack sats, maybe educate people, try to do it, right, along the way.
It's almost like freedom can be scary for people. Freedom can be frightening, and it seems to be good to be true. And then if you're actually like, oh, like it could be actually true, then it's like, oh, I don't want that because it's scary. Or I don't want to have my own seed phrase because what if I lose it? What if what if something happens to it? Something like all those questions come in your head, and it can be scary. It's a new kind of future, and I think we have to be careful with going too quick in there. And you mentioned it might be like if the Titanic is sinking, we should. We should argue for a very slow sinking of the Titanic, so we can have enough time to get everyone on the savings boat. But at the same time, every day this fiat jail goes on, it makes things even worse and worse and worse. So it's hard to say. It's good that nobody's in control of how fast this orange pilling goes, because it would be a hard debate. It isn't anyways an organic movement that goes forward if you like or don't like, and then it comes just down to educating your loved ones and get as many people as possible as soon as possible to the good side. And that's kind of that's kind of where I'm at with like, oh, let's scream it out in the ocean. Let's tell people about it, and let's work towards it, and hopefully we get to it. But once we kind of got distracted of the first thing we wanted to talk about, of how you did your loan, and what was your strategy around that. Only took us half an hour to get here.
Sorry, I'm guilty of that. I'm guilty of that. I sometimes diverge from the main course of the discussion while my thoughts are going somewhere. But when I get the flow and I chase the, then it's hard to help myself. So you feel free to just interrupt me, like, "Hey, Karol, but we were supposed to talk about the loan."
No. Those ramblings are the best parts of the podcast usually. So I love that. But what are you doing now with using the bad system to get quick into the good system and get better into the good system? And how do you do that with the loan? And what's your strategy and your reasoning behind that?
So it all started, like, I actually am not that long. I do not have that much experience as a Bitcoin Maxi. I think it's more like, I would say 4 months, 5 months. I'm pretty fresh from the oven. But at that time, eventually I was sort of despaired. I felt like when my company died, second my company died, third company died, one of my projects died, that I got a hope that it's going to blow up, it's going to do something for me. my company failed me. Not my company, but the company that I worked for failed me. Kind of, I was going above and beyond, and then in January I asked for a raise, and they told me you can get a 10%. Well, accumulated inflation for the last like 3 years were like 30% in Poland. So I basically, when I started there like a 2.5 year ago. I was making less than I was making when I started, and it crushed me, and I started to explore this Bitcoin thing. Like, okay, but there's one thing that hasn't failed me. Like, Bitcoin is growing, it's going up. I started buying in 2022, and I was like buying every single month. It is the story from the trader to the Maxi. And eventually I thought to myself, okay, so many things failed me in my life. So many financial, like my companies, or like whenever I want to make some more money, everything fails. It's probably some of things because of me, some of this is because of the system that we're living. And then I thought to myself, okay, let's just explore this Bitcoin thing. Like, it is growing. It's the only thing that's not failing me. I've never been bad. Like, whenever I bought Bitcoin, it's of course in the short term it might have dipped for a bit, but eventually it was going up and up and up and up. And so like, let's just explore the thing. What is it about? What is this technology? Like, I perceived it before, like maybe a new Facebook, like for information, for social media, right? Or it's like MySpace, like when you have a MySpace and Facebook, that I thought to myself, like, okay, maybe to the current system, the Bitcoin is the Facebook to the MySpace or something like that. But just said like, okay, let's just explore it because it seems like very beneficial for me. And I started to explore it, and I stumbled upon a book from Safety and Amos, The Bitcoin Standard. And by the way, this book was sitting on my shelf for like a half a year. And, I thought to myself, I don't want to, I bought it, but I thought to myself, like, I don't want to read it. I already know everything about Bitcoin, like, what else can I learn, right? So, and eventually I started reading it, and it's, it just sparked in my brain. Like, I felt like just like when you have these puzzles, all together, like all around, laying around, all these experiences or these bad emotions or these bad things. And eventually, this book just like pulled all the strings together and just basically like an arch reactor in the Iron Man suit, just pull it in. And from this empty shell, you are just this bunch of scraped metal. You just start to breathe and think. And then I got from safety and I got into Saylor, and I promise I'm getting into the loan thing. But I want to tell you the background, right? Like, it's easy to say like, oh, I just took a loan, bought a Bitcoin, right? But I guess like what pushed me to do it, right? So, and I started to watch, after saving, I just decided like, there's this guy that is just buying Bitcoin or something. He's talking about Bitcoin all day. Like, what is this guy doing even? Right? Like, and I watched this Lex Friedman podcast with Saylor. Right? And it was the first interaction with Saylor I had, and I watched it, whole thing. It is like 5 hours or something. I understood maybe half of it, and I said like, okay, this guy is brilliant. He's talking about some very interesting things, but I know that this is valuable what he's talking about, but I don't understand what he's talking about, right? And eventually I watched it the second time. Then I watched it with like ChatGPT, and when I asked him on the go, like, okay, he's talking about this. It's just like convertible bonds. What is convertible bond? Like it's hard to comprehend such a terminology from a financial system when when you barely know about what is inflation or some basic stuff, right? Some scalars they're talking about. Like, this is a great conversation. This absolute banger. This interview, and it has only like million views. It is a joke. It should have like 100 million views or something. By the way, so eventually I started to listen to Saylor. Then I watched this podcast. I understood it partially, still not 100%. Till this day, I watched it probably like 4 or 5 times. And then I started to go on this binge watching of all of his podcasts, right? For the last half a year. And there was a bunch of them because at that time he was doing like a lot of podcasts. And eventually, he gave me this idea, right? Like, that, since Bitcoin is kind of a 30% risk free annual returns, like, why don't you get a mortgage? Why don't you get a loan that, you know, that rate is 10%, and it's just easy money printing. And I thought to myself, no, it's a crazy idea. It's a crazy idea. I'm not going to take a loan to buy a Bitcoin, right? It also, like, it didn't fit in my brain at the time. But eventually, you know, the more I learned about Bitcoin, how it works, that this is not a speculative asset, right? Like, because most of the people, I still at the time was thinking like, it's a speculative asset a little bit. It might go, it goes down a lot. You know, I don't know. Is it going to succeed or not? You know, you got to answer all these questions before you take this loan, right? You got to be prepared. The loan is leverage, kind of, right? So if you want to take a leverage, you got to be very, very convinced that the asset you're buying, it doesn't matter what it is, I guess. It doesn't matter what the uh, investment is, right? You got to really, really learn about what you're doing, right, before you do that. So that's why I do not recommend it to everyone. That's why it's not a financial advice. You got to have like a very stable understanding what a Bitcoin is before you do this. Where unless you're a degen and just going to put on some leverage and go trade it on a Binance or whatever. So it was marinating in my brain for a while. I was going a lot of back and forth. No, I can do it. Right? Like, okay, I should do it. Okay, no, I can do it. And eventually, after I learned, I decided, okay, I have to do it. You know, because eventually, what that means for me, it is, okay, this is quite a big loan, but it's like 3 years of my savings if I take it. So at the end of the day, 3 years of savings, to me, it was like, okay, you know, it's quite a lot, but I can make it. If I lose it all, if a Bitcoin goes to zero, I lost 3 years of savings, you know. And if a Bitcoin goes to 10 million a coin, I win everything, right? Like, it's like the risk to reward ratio eventually it's uncomparable, right? It's like, to the some extent, it seemed to me like brainless decision to do it. Like, yeah, it's the risk to reward is so high that if I don't make this decision, then, you know, maybe I shouldn't go out of my house because I'm afraid of something bad is happening to me. You know, maybe I'm gonna sit in my home all day and for the next 10 years because I'm afraid to go out on the street. Maybe something bad happens to me, right? So, yeah, like, I feel it's operating, eventually, Bitcoin is operating on such a low level of risk, in my opinion. It's such a low level of risk that, like, point me one thing that is less risky and is giving such a high returns. You know, I cannot think right now about anything like this. That's why I made this decision. Eventually, I pulled the trigger. And by the way, you know, it's in the end, not the end of the story, because then I got hit by the system, right? Like, you get the loan, you want to buy Bitcoin for it, like, be prepared, you know, like, be prepared. Like, first of all, I couldn't make such a big transfer from my bank account to the crypto exchange where I wanted to buy it, right? I had to split it in half. And then, you know, once you split it in half, then you send one transfer. And there it goes like, oh, are you sure you want to send that big of an amount, right? Like, we got to confirm that with you. We're going to call you, right? I'm like, what do you mean you're going to call me, right? Like, and this is also like a learning curve. With the loan, is you're, you know, I learned so much from this experience. Not only, you know, you want to buy something with your own money, you want to, I don't even imagine how wealthy individuals, actually wealthy people, live like that. I don't know. But if you want to make an example, like $1 million transfer from someone, I don't know. I've made significantly less, but it still was such a big hassle, right? Like, I sent it to the crypto exchange, and they asked, like, okay, we're gonna call you. I said, okay, where's the number? I'm gonna call you. You know, just make this transfer right now, because I feel like Bitcoin is going to blow up soon. It was at the time, you know, in October. It was right before it just smashed from 60K to like 90K. So I was lucky. I was super lucky, and I knew it's coming. Okay, maybe I knew it's coming. I don't have a glass ball, but I like. Eventually, we all know that Bitcoin, the faster you buy Bitcoin, the you know, the more you're gonna get on the other end out of it, right? the faster you buy Bitcoin, the more you can buy for your own fiat, because you're gonna can in the future will buy less and less for your fiat. So I was shaking inside, like, come on, just I want to buy this Bitcoin. What's going on? They didn't let me through this bank transfer. They canceled. They declined it. But before they declined, I had a call. She was like, there was someone on the line asking me, like, oh, do you have a financial advisor? I said no. Do you know that the crypto possesses some risk? If you're gonna invest, you're gonna lose it all, right? And blah 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 blah. Like, I had like a 15 or 20 minutes call with them, and they were shooting wood to me with whatever they had, and eventually at the end of the day they declined it. So I had to go to the bank physically. I said, okay, screw that. This doesn't work. I have to go to the bank. I have to show them that I'm sane, that I'm sober. I don't know. And I really, really want to do that, right? And after that, after I went to the bank, I still got another call, right? I still got another call, but then it went through. So one of the transfer out of two went through. And the second one, I again got a call, and again, and it went through, right? But this just showed me also, right? Like, is this money truly mine, right? Am I an idiot, right? Like, is this system treating me like I'm an idiot, right? Like, maybe there are some of people that, are idiots and just gonna go and trade whatever meme coin they're gonna buy on this, because they don't know if that I'm going to buy Bitcoin for a long term. But I don't know. It just showed me that if you wanna, like, is this money truly mine? I don't know. Like, it seems like it's mine, but is it truly mine? And on the other hand, you got a Bitcoin. You want to send $1 million transfer to someone else? Boom. You got 10 minutes on chain, or in a Lightning case, right? You got seconds, and nobody's asking a question, right? Nobody can censor this. Nobody can stop this. And that even deeper, like, showed me, like, how big of a friction, how much friction this current system we're living in has for the commerce, right? If I want to trade with someone across the world, it's so hard. Like, it's so hard. Like, that's why Bitcoin can change it, remove all this friction from the whole system, and make all of our lives easier, right?
I partnered up with Coin Vigilante. This is the most beautiful Bitcoin timepiece that I ever saw created by anyone. Look at that beauty. I love it so much. Coin Vigilante made a perfect Bitcoin watch. That's the perfect, subtle, elegant way to go out there and show that you are a Bitcoiner. And that watch brand is Bitcoin only. And Coin Vigilante just dropped a completely new and amazing Genesis edition of their watch collections. You have the date of the first ever mined Bitcoin block in there, and of course also the block height and which epoch we are currently in. I love the level of detail they put in this masterpiece, and make sure to check out those amazing Coin Vigilante timepieces down in the descriptions. I love those watches so much. If you watch or listen to my podcast on a regular basis, I guess you already bought some Bitcoin. And now the most important step is to keep the Bitcoin. Keep them secure in a hardware wallet. My personal recommendation for hardware wallet is the BitBox. It's super secure. It's simple to set up. It's also a perfect gift for a friend who has still their Bitcoin on an exchange. And you can get a 5% discount with the code Robin at the checkout. Visit bitbox.swiss/Robin to get your BitBox. And the next step is to really level up your sovereignty as an individual. You have to have the most secure self-custody setup. You have to secure your own devices. You have to protect your privacy. You have to set up an inheritance plan. And depending on where you live, you even want to have a plan B, a citizenship where you can move in case something goes really wrong. And through all those steps, the Bitcoin way is guiding you through step by step. And if you visit thebitcoinway.com/partners/Robin, you even get a 30-minute free call to find out how you can level up your sovereignty. There was a lot in there, and
Sorry.
I loved it all the way. Especially the moment when the banking system kind of puts the barriers in, and they're trying really, really hard. But I think they get now that they have to embrace it more and more. There's in Germany already a bank that fully embraces Bitcoin. You can buy Bitcoin with them. You can custody that with them. They are doing one of the biggest German-speaking Bitcoin events, which is really good and has good speakers. And they are hosting like 1,000 people there. So they are actually embracing it, and they're also embracing Bitcoin, not crypto. Like they get the signal of it, which is amazing. So slowly there are here and there banks that actually get it and actually embrace Bitcoin. But there are banks like seemingly your bank that they don't want that, and they want to protect their consumer and don't want people to invest in Bitcoin, which is very sad, because either there's an agenda behind that or they are seriously that uninformed. I say it very diplomatically now, but
Yeah.
they either one of two, I don't know, especially because I don't know your bank also, but there are banks that embrace it and there are banks that don't embrace it, and I think those banks that embrace Bitcoin now, the regional banks, I'm not talking about the central banks, they have a chance of actually surviving. Maybe they can find actually valuable services and products around Bitcoin they can offer to their customers, and then they can survive even without the fiat system. Like that's possible. But I can guarantee you, those banks who don't do that, they will suffer a lot, and maybe even suffer to death to some point. So I hate all interactions with banks, and I have a story. Like I got a physical check. I don't have it anymore, but I got a physical check from an old landlord, around 30 euros, and I cannot redeem it here in Austria. I got that from Germany, and I simply cannot redeem it anywhere here in Austria, because they would need to send that check to the headquarter physically to see if it's backed, and then they can give me cash for 30 euros. So I decided to just throw it away because after
You could
visiting,
have put it on the wall as a sign, of a bad system. So it reminds me every day, like, okay, this is what I'm fighting for,
it enraged me so much that I don't want any reminders to it. Like it was like, oh. Luckily, it was just 30 euros. Because if it would be like 100 euros or more, it would really annoy me. And then I would have had to email those people, and I really don't want to do that. But there wasn't 3 different banks here in Austria, and they all told me, they don't take it anymore, or you have to be a customer to take it. And I was like, I'm not a I'm not a customer, sorry. So yeah, the banking system and this has a lot of weird things that I really disagree with, and I think that's the things that will bring them down eventually. Really cool. So you took that loan out, and you're doing that now. As you said, is there anything where like, okay, it's not for every person? It's not. Is there anything that you could recommend of like, okay, then you should not do and stuff like that?
Well, I think it's very hard to tell. I feel like I myself personally also it boils down maybe to some risk, like how to put it. In life, you accept some level of risk. Some of people accept lower level of risk. Some of the people are accepting higher levels of risks. This is what the Saylor is like sometimes saying about his stocks, right? Like some people will just buy Bitcoin, hold it, it's fine. Some of the people that accept more risk, they just buy MSTR, buy it, and some of them are buying MSTX, right, and just trading it on leverage. It's like 2x leverage on MSTX, and they're fine with that. So it depends on you. and depends, really hardly depends on your financial condition. Like in my case, I took this is 10 years loan, and I took it for as long as I can. So I pay as little every month, and for me it's like less than a 10% of my monthly income, right? So I would say this is very, very on a conservative side of things. It's very hard to tell, just give a universal here advice to anyone, but I think it's very much worth exploring. But first of all, you just gotta study Bitcoin, right? This is most important factor. Taking a loan is just last piece of the whole story, right? Just study Bitcoin, put in those 1,000 hours or something in a Bitcoin, right? And then think again, right? Just take a deep breath, think again. Should you do it? Should you not do it? I think in most of the cases, I think the answer should be like, yes, you should do it, probably, because it just makes a lot of sense, right? You should take advantage of the system that is killing you, and just take that bad thing from the system, just make it a good thing, right? And buy Bitcoin and just hold it for a long time.
Absolutely, yeah. Do you think there's a similar debt system on Bitcoin? Is there some similar system that you foresee once we get to a Bitcoin standard?
Yeah, I think on a Bitcoin standard. So yes, this is the thing, right? Like on a Bitcoin standard, the if you're taking a debt in a full reserve system, like full Bitcoin reserve system, right? This is a moral thing to do. This is not something. It might not be wise thing to do, right? To take a loan, but it is not unethical like it is right now, immoral like it is right now, right? Because eventually, if I give you my Bitcoin and you tell me, like, okay, I'm gonna invest this Bitcoin from you and just do with it whatever you want, right? I'm not diluting the system. I'm not expanding the system of money. Still the same, right? I just gave someone my Bitcoin, and this is how I think it should work eventually. Uh, should you do it? Should there be any loans? Like I recently was watching Jack Mallers. He's thinking about his new product about Bitcoin collateralized loans. Where I haven't explored this for now. For now, my plan is just simple. I'm not taking any loans. I just have a cash flow. I just have enough cash flow that I'm satisfied of. Maybe in the future, if I will need some more money, or whatever the money is going to be, because if it's on the Bitcoin standard, what is the thing that you're going to lend me, right? Like, what's the like? If you give me your Bitcoin, what is the collateral I'm giving to you, right? Like, what is the thing you're gonna accept, right? Like my house, something valuable, probably, right? Because you're gonna make it count, the Bitcoin that you're giving up. Because if it's going to appreciate by itself, because when the productivity of our humanity, of the economy, is growing year by year, right? You're making money just by holding the Bitcoin. It's the deflationary system. So when you ask me on a Bitcoin standard, it's tough to. I never like explored myself this field. What would it mean? Because Bitcoin is going to be the money. Right? What I'm giving you, if you want to lend a Bitcoin from me, what you're giving me in exchange, right? What's the collateral on this one? But in a fiat system, I guess it is possible for now. Let's see how it goes. I was thinking about it, like, how do they create this product? It's an interesting idea. Like, okay, I got some Bitcoin. I want to get a loan. So how much for my one Bitcoin? How am I gonna get in exchange? Was it like 10%, 20%? So I'm gonna get like $20,000. Why only $20,000? Because you're not going to get like the full amount, right? Because what if the Bitcoin dips 50%, right? Then they don't want to be behind, because also they take this money from some other bank, right? They're just like intermediary. Like if Strike is going to do this product, it's going to be an intermediary. So I don't know how it's going to work, but if I'm getting like 10 or 20% from a Bitcoin, I don't know if it's worth it. I don't know if it's worth it. They have to. I don't know how they're going to build this product. I'm very interested to look forward to it. I never explored it. Let's see how it goes, right? But most likely, my scenario is I'm not lending anyone my Bitcoin. I'm not getting a loan against my Bitcoin as a collateral. Uh, the plan is simple. I think the just buy Bitcoin, hold Bitcoin, stack sats, just and until we get to the phase where the Bitcoin is the unit of account, uh, I'm just gonna hold it. Maybe I buy some Bitcoin. I buy some Bitcoin and I spend it on Bitraffle from time to time, just buying some stuff. I try to do it, but it's very clunky at this moment. But yeah, about the loans. Let's see what the future brings. I'm not the financial expert. I'm not the biggest financial brain. And you can judge it by my past, right? Like this is this guy that took a bunch of short-term loans and then ran into troubles. Like eureka! Like who would have thought it happens, right? Like nobody could have seen that coming, right? I couldn't see that coming, so I guess uh, I don't know what's coming in the loans system for now against
I
Bitcoin.
I hope there's something interesting coming. I hope there's, because I really don't I don't like getting my Bitcoin in some exchange to get some dollars out of there. Like that seems to be wrong for me. I prefer either I I'm ready to pay more interest on a normal loan before I give up some of my Bitcoin or risk some of my Bitcoin. Like if I get 4% interest rates with collateral versus 8% without collateral, I take the 8%. I pay a little bit more than with collateral. And actually with collateral, most of them are still like 7-8%, the products that I've seen out there from Bitcoin. So that's really unattractive for me. They have to be super low, like 1%, 2% interest rate, 0% interest rate, stuff like that. And I'm like, oh, that might be interesting. But then you have to see like, how are they securing the Bitcoin? How do I make sure they are not running away with my Bitcoin? Because if they give me 0% interest rate and I give them one Bitcoin and they run away with that and I have $20,000, yeah, I lost a lot of money on that.
Not the best
So
deal.
that's not the
Yeah.
best idea. So it seems to be an hard topic to crack, but it could be interesting to get money against your Bitcoin. But I'm not willing to give anyone my Bitcoin. I'm
Yeah.
willing to prove that a public address is actually mine and prove that with a signature. That's possible. But I'm not willing to give them my Bitcoin. It's the same thing. Like you should be able to do that without transferring your Bitcoin. And if I'm not able to do that, I will not do it. That's as simple as
Yeah.
that. But yeah, maybe Strike comes out with a really interesting product where you can keep it in self custody, just sign a transaction to prove that the Bitcoin are actually yours,
They said that it
and
won't
they'll do it.
happen. You will have to give them your Bitcoin. They confirmed it. I believe it was on a last podcast or something that they're thinking about this product, but you'll have to give it away to their custody, right? So you have to trust Jack Mallers. He's a great guy. Don't get me wrong. Like I would probably trust him, but still, I think in a
I don't
Bitcoin
trust anyone.
community, yeah, in a Bitcoin community, it's a very, very hard thing to do because we don't trust, right? Which is very
I
fine.
I don't trust. I don't trust anyone else with my Bitcoin. I'm so
Yeah,
sorry.
yeah,
Sorry, Jack, but not even you. Even though
yeah,
I
yeah, yeah,
don't
yeah.
think you're up to
I
anything
I
bad.
respect that. I respect that, and I think this is a super important message to all the viewers, right? Like, just and it's also like yeah, I love the model of Bitcoin. This is what also hit me because I was, even before I got into Bitcoin, I was making some. videos on YouTube, right, and where I was reviewing something, an example, whatever that is, right, and I always like to finish my episode with like saying, okay, but at the end of the day, I'm just a guy on the internet. Just verify it yourself, right? And that's what hit me also with the Bitcoin. That the motto is right. The don't trust, verify, right? And I really love that. And we should, yeah, limit our trust to someone else holding our bag. We should trust ourselves primarily.
How was that for you? Because you said you are fairly recently a Bitcoin Maxi. How was that change in your brain, the change in the transformation that you went through? Did anything else change besides just like being focused on Bitcoin only? Did you live through anything?
Oh yeah, definitely. I think it boils down to the time preference. This is what also struck me. I think this is the most important thing that struck me in Save the Book, the Bitcoin standard, that I would like to really recommend to anyone. I think it's also like a great starter pack. If you want to, if you already introduced Bitcoin to someone, some of your friend, you want to just push it a little bit further, just give them the book. Safety is really he did a great, fantastic job of doing it. So I think I started to think more long term. So my time preference got a little bit lower, and also like I think like Bitcoin empowered me in a way that now when I hold my Bitcoin, I feel, because I'm an IT manager, I'm a product owner, and I feel like it made me a better product manager, because eventually, when you have a Bitcoin behind you, right? You like I was thinking about it from time to time in my job, right? Boss is coming to me and he's a very important person and he's trying to push something on you, right? Like, okay, do this or do that, right? But sometimes you know better than him, because he's way up there. He's barely seeing your product, right? But he has some idea he would like to push on, but he doesn't know that the thing that he's going to push on is going to actually break the product, not help it, right? So when you don't have savings behind you, or I think the best form of saving is Bitcoin, when you don't have a Bitcoin behind you, maybe you're going to say, oh, okay, whatever, I'm going to do it, right? I'm just going to be polite. I'm just going to, okay, well, let's do it. I'm not going to say no because he's going to get angry and maybe he's going to fire me. And if I don't have a savings, you know, uh, they pay me well. I live from first day of the month till the next, from paycheck to paycheck, right? And it's very hard when you're living from a paycheck to paycheck to say no to someone in the power, right? Because he's gonna fire you, and what are you gonna do, right? There is a chance he's gonna fire you, right? But there's also a chance that he's gonna respect that and appreciate that, and it's going to help the company, and it's going to help your product to build a better product, because you're a sovereign individual. You can say no to people, right? You can say more often no to people, because you don't have to rely on them like throwing you a bone, right? You got already a bunch of bones, in your savings account in a cold storage, so you can sell to those people no, and eventually, if they're smart, they're gonna respect that, because most of the people, I guess, I don't know. Maybe I'm not going to talk about most of the people. I don't know, but it seems like a lot of people struggle with it, right? Like someone in power comes to them and they just say, "Okay, yes." Maybe if they would have a Bitcoin, it would be easier for them to tell no. And eventually, if you say no, they're going to respect you, and maybe you're going to get a better salary because you're a more sovereign, more confident person. I feel like I'm more confident also because I have a Bitcoin, and this confidence in the daily life, it, it's like working in the background. Like maybe I cannot pinpoint a specific situation. I say like, oh yes, when I had a Bitcoin behind my back, I just made this great deal, right? But this boost of confidence that this gives you, it empowers you in even in those smaller decisions, right? If you're more confident, if you're more courageous, you take your life, you take the bull by the horn, which is called life, right? And you are on the driving seat. You're in the driving seat. You're no longer just sitting in a bag and whoever else is just driving, right? And it also Bitcoin forces you to do it. Like you wanna be sovereign individual. You want to hold your own seat phrase. Like you you gotta, if you want to do all those things, right? The freedom comes with a cost. Like it's not for free. And if you want to do all these things, it pushes you to be a sovereign individual, to take a seat in the wheel, not to sit in the back just and someone else is driving. Whoever is this, like your boss, the current economist, or your politician, or whoever that is, right?
Interesting. How has your definition of freedom changed, or did it change in that time?
Wow, that's interesting. That's an interesting question. How my definition of freedom changed? Huh. Uh, I don't know if my definitely, definitely it changed the way that the more Bitcoin you have, the more freedom I have. I don't know if the definition changed, but the more Bitcoin I have, the more free I feel I am. The 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 more I watch into the future to my retirement. I'm 32 years old, and I sometimes maybe it's not right thought to have. I don't know, but sometimes feel like we're all gonna die, right? Eventually, and I think sometimes about my death, and I think about my retirement. I think about my kids. I think about the future. I think it pushed me to think about the future of myself and how I'm going to retire. And also when I have my Bitcoin, I feel like I sleep safer. Even though I had a loan on my back, I still feel like I sleep like a kid, like a little child in a bed. I really go down to bed, and this is a freedom to me too, right? Like you go to sleep and you're calm. You're more calmer than you are that you would wear without a Bitcoin, right? Uh, so yeah, I don't know if I answered your question, but that's it about Bitcoin and the freedom of Bitcoin.
I love that. Yeah, it's super interesting how Bitcoin can change someone's perspective on freedom or not change it depending on where they already are. Really cool. I have a bunch of topics, but we are already kind of at the end of the podcast. And I asked each and every one of my guests one question, and it is, what can we learn from you besides Bitcoin?
What can we learn? Yes, I think you can learn from me a lot about the diet. It's actually interesting. Usually people get to Bitcoin first, and then they get to the diet thing. But I actually was first in the diet, like a keto and carnivore, and then I discovered Bitcoin. And it clicked also. Like Saved Amos, he's a carnivore, as I understand. So I looked at the list, and it was like Saved Amos, Bitcoiner, carnivore. Interesting. Uh, Saylor, he was also talking about a carnivore diet. So Bitcoin Maxi, carnivore. Is that a coincidence, right? You start to think like when you look around, you feel like there's not many people on carnivore diet, right? So it's really rare to see someone talking publicly about it, right? And especially like a public figure. So and then I went on the Orange Pill app. There was a guy is living next to me, Bitcoin Maxi, carnivore. I started feeling like, what is going on, right? And it also like started to drill this hole in my brain. Maybe there's something about a Bitcoin and a carnivore, and they're somehow connected to each other. So, guys, if you want to find out some more about me, about diet, and you want to talk about diet, I'm a big carnivore freak. I talk a lot about the diet, about the keto, about the carnivore. So you can learn. I don't know if a lot, but I've spent a lot of time studying these two topics because at some point I was just super obese. My weight was like I was 120 kilo, and eventually I pulled it down to like 75. Then I went up to like 90, where I am right now. But it's because I screwed up, and yeah, I went off the carnivore diet because it's sometimes very hard. In the current society, when everybody is eating Fiat food, it's sometimes too tempting. The dark side is tempting, and you just you fall off the wagon and start eating the crappy food. So I guess if you want to learn more about keto carnivore, I'm definitely gonna in my social media. I'm gonna definitely post more about it because I just love this idea, and I think there is a lot yet still to discover and learn about it for people.
I loved, and a lot of people actually bring that up in the podcast. And our end routine is so perfectly fitting to what we were talking about right now, because the end routine is where the previous guest is asking a question for the next guest without knowing who the next guest actually is. And the previous guest asked you, "What would you cook Michael Saylor for dinner?"
That is interesting. That is interesting. But I think I would go with a simple answer. I would just cook a best T-bone steak I can find around. I guess it would be just a T-bone steak because this is my favorite dish, and I bet it would be also the best dish for Saylor, and it would be the healthiest meal for Saylor. And I really, really hope he's gonna live long and strong for upcoming years. So I would really like to cook him something very, very healthy. Uh, yeah, so I guess it would be a T-bone steak. Hope he would
Really
love
cool.
that.
Perfect. Then before I let you go, where can people find you, ask you questions, and reach out to you?
Excuse me.
Where can people find you, reach out to you,
Oh
and ask
yeah.
you questions?
So you guys can find me on LinkedIn. I know I'm not on Twitter. I'm not on Facebook. I'm not on Instagram. I just deleted most of them like a year ago or something. So you can find me on LinkedIn. Look for Karol Nagel, product manager. You will find me there. This is the place where I, machine gun with a Bitcoin to a lot of these other people and normies about Bitcoin. And you can find me on Nostr. So if you type in Karol BTC, you'll find me on Nostr, and this is where I sit also, and this is the place where I meet with other Bitcoin maxis and where I talk about the future to come about the Bitcoin standard. And you can also find me on YouTube. I recently just Karol BTC also is on the YouTube. You can find me there. Just have like 3 episodes, but it's hard to kick off this channel for me. But eventually, I think adding more and more and more content there because I just can't help myself talking about Bitcoins.
Absolutely, really cool. It was a pleasure talking with you. It was really interesting. Thank you so much, Karol. Thank you also so much for everyone that is watching and listening for joining us today. As always, I'll be back tomorrow with another episode. Bye bye.
Bye bye.